Right. Hey everyone, I'm Mackenzie Winner, and I am the author of several Outlaw Queen fics. Thanks to all of you on Twitter who voted in the past week on the polls I put up. I will be reading Chapter 19, or what I have so far of Chapter 19, from my fic, The Nanny. So here we go. Chapter 19, One Day More. Regina's stomach woke her the next morning, though not from hunger as she would have expected after not really eating anything the day before. No, it was aching and churning in a familiar warning. She pushed back the covers and raced to Robin's bathroom, falling to her knees as she emptied what little content she had in her stomach into the toilet. "Regina," Robin's sleep-laden voice floated over her. "Regina, my God, what's wrong?" She felt her hair get pulled back and away from her neck as Robin began to rub her back until she finished. He then helped her lean back against the tub, sitting next to her on the floor. She let her head fall against his shoulder, her eyes closing. "Are you feeling better?" he asked. "I think so," she replied. "I guess the stress just got to me." He hummed. "Do you want to go back to bed, or do you want me to get something to help you settle your stomach? Can we do both? Or do you have something about food in the bed?" Robin chuckled. "Trust me, I am all for food in the bed. You climb back in and I'll get you some tea." "Thank you," she said, letting him help her up. She wobbled a bit and swayed when she took a few steps. Robin frowned, holding her hand as she tried to walk. "Do you need a little more support? You seem shaky." "A little help would be nice," she admitted. When he wrapped his arm around her middle, she leaned heavily against him as he guided her back to the bed. Regina climbed under the covers and sat against the headboard. Once she was situated, Robin gave her a small smile. "You rest. I'll go make you some tea." She closed her eyes and sighed. Her stomach wasn't completely settled, but she didn't think she would be sprinting to the toilet again. She probably needed something to eat, a good, proper meal. If Emma or Robin or Will knew how little she had eaten yesterday, they would lecture her to Kingdom Come. "Regina, are you okay?" Roland's little voice reached her ears. Her eyes popped open, and she found him standing in the doorway, clutching Teddy close. "I just had a tummy ache. Your father is making me some tea," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Is something wrong, sweetheart?" He climbed into the bed, settling down beside her. "I heard someone walking, and then I saw Papa's light on, so I came here." "I see we have company," Robin said, walking into the room carrying his travel mug. He handed it to her. "Here, so we don't have to worry too much about spills." She smiled, taking a sip as she watched Robin climb back into bed. The hot liquid soothed her stomach, and she took another sip, feeling much better. "Thank you for this, Robin." "Of course. Now you, young man," Robin said, tickling his son. "What are you doing out of bed?" "You woke me up," Roland exclaimed in between giggles. Regina watched the scene, her heart feeling lighter as she watched father and son at play. Robin grinned at her before looking down at Roland. "I think you should go back to bed, and we can all get some more sleep." "Can't I sleep in here with you and Regina, please?" He clasped his hands around his Teddy and gave them his biggest puppy eyes. "I don't mind," Regina said, setting down the mug on the nightstand Robin had set up on her side of the bed. He nodded, looking down at Roland. "Okay, my boy, you can stay." Roland cheered, scooting down until his head was resting on both their pillows. She and Robin did the same, curling around the boy. "Good night, Roland," she whispered. "Good night, Regina," he whispered back, cuddling closer to her. She kissed his curls before letting sleep pull her under again. Regina woke a few hours later when her stomach churned again. She took a deep breath through her nose and let it out through her mouth, repeating it a few times before reaching for her tea. It was still somewhat warm and tasted fine, soothing her stomach. Beside her, Robin and Roland continued to sleep on. Father was curled around son, who was now clinging to his nightshirt. The sight made Regina smile before it faltered. She pushed back the covers and slipped out of bed without waking either Locksley before padding out to the balcony attached to Robin's room. With the retelling of what happened a decade ago, Michael Tillman and his family now haunted her mind. As she stood on the balcony and a soft summer breeze toyed with her hair, she remembered the last time she saw Doria Tillman. The woman had glowed as she rested a hand on her large, rounded stomach and proudly told Regina she was having twins. Michael had beamed next to her, though he was a bit nervous about handling 2 babies at once. What had become of Doria and the babies with him in prison? Regina, is something wrong? Robin stepped out onto the balcony, disturbing her thoughts. She shrugged. Just thinking. About anything you feel like talking about? He leaned against the railing next to her. An idea struck her, and she leaned closer to him. Can I ask you for a favor? Of course, he replied. Anything. Can you have August look into Michael Tillman for me? I've always wanted to know what happened to him, but have been too afraid to look. I guess I had this irrational fear that he would learn I was looking and come confront me. She glanced down at her hands, guilt churning inside her again. He nodded. I can do that, to give you peace of mind. Thank you, she replied, laying her hand on top of his. How are you? How am I? I'm not the one about to turn herself in for a crime she should not have been forced to commit in the first place, and who just had to relive the most painful year of her life. Don't worry about me. Let's worry about you, he said, the pain back in his eyes. She wondered if it would ever really go away, or if he would blame himself until he started blaming her. Regina, what's wrong, he asked. You seem to have gone far away for a moment. You need to talk about your feelings. Bottling up isn't good. Trust me, I'm somewhat of an expert. She wrapped her arms around her chest, hugging herself. It wasn't much of a comfort. He sighed. I want to be supportive of you, Regina, and I don't want to burden you with my own issues. I felt the same way, she replied, and look where that got me. If you want to share my burdens, you have to let me share yours. Got it? Robin grew silent before looking out at the woods. No, I am feeling guilty. Like I told you last night, this is technically all my fault. I sent August poking where I had no right to, and it awakened gold. You make him sound like the Kraken. He's not that bad, she said, sliding closer to him. Look, there are many bad guys in this whole situation. None of them are on this balcony. He let out a little laugh before glancing at her, a soft look in his eyes. May I hug you? Yes, please. She nearly fell into his arms, wrapping her own around him. Regina laid her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Come on, he said, rocking her gently. Let's go see if Will started breakfast. I'm sure you're starving. Regina pulled away, nodding. You know what? I am. Thought so. Did you eat anything substantial yesterday? Lunch, she admitted, grimacing. He wrapped his arm around her waist, shaking his head. That won't do. Let's go get Roland and feed you. Robin sat in his office, staring at his screen. He had dropped Regina off at the First Bank of Storybrooke, where John had met her to retrieve the evidence she had in her safety deposit box. She seemed a bit more upbeat, and Robin believed she had hope again. It was a relief. When he got in, Robin had first called August and talked to him about Regina's request. August had hesitated for a few moments. And you're sure Regina's on board with this? Yes, Robin said, understanding his concern. She asked for this favor herself. We'll figure out how to code this for payroll later. I just wanted to make sure you weren't making the same mistake twice. August stood. Robin nodded. Thank you, but I've definitely learned my lesson. I'm not risking my relationship with Regina ever again. Well, I'll get to work and let you know what I find. He left Robin's office. Next, Robin focused on the whole Selena matter. He called Mulan for an update. She's been released on bail, she told him. Her father paid it, I believe. But she does have an ankle monitor, so she's not going anywhere. Good. I know Chester Osgreen has some houses abroad. I'd hate for her to disappear somewhere that doesn't have an extradition treaty with the States, Robin said, sighing. How are the staff? Shaken up. No one expected someone to actually be stealing from the company. But most of them didn't really like Selena much anyway. I think this change is going to be good for morale out here. Robin rubbed his forehead. Good, but maybe this is a wake-up call. We can't keep ignoring the West Coast division. Yeah, we'll have to work out a schedule so we have a stronger presence out here, Mulan agreed. Anyway, I have to run. Good luck with Regina. He hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, her story once again playing through his head. It made him want to throw up and then go fly to wherever Leopold had retired to in order to beat him to a bloody pulp. Retirement. The word jolted his memory, reminding him of something Mary Margaret had said at his birthday party. He opened his web browser and began to do some research, believing he might find some additional clues that could help John defend Regina. The bell over the door announced his arrival to Granny's Diner, the establishment across the street from Henry's apartment that held such fond memories for Regina. Robin stood there for a moment, taking in the vintage booths and tables, as well as the counter where several patrons enjoyed their lunch. Waiters and waitresses in white and red checkered outfits tended to the patrons. It seemed like something out of a movie. Regina waved from one of the booths by the window, where she sat with John. He walked over to the booth, sliding in next to her. "Hello there," he said, greeting her with a quick kiss. "What do you think of the place?" she asked, looking like she was showing off her apartment rather than her favorite diner. He grinned. "It looks great, but I think I need to try the food before I pass judgment on it. What do you recommend?" Regina has always had the same thing since she was a little girl, a BLT with cheese, an older woman said, approaching the table. She held out her hand. "I'm Granny." Robin shook her hand. "Nice to meet you. Regina's told me so much about you and your diner. All good things, of course." "Of course." Granny smiled at Regina. "Will it be the BLT with cheese, dear?" "BLT, yes. Cheese, no. It's not very appealing right now for some reason," Regina said, looking a bit green. She pressed her hand against her stomach. Robin frowned, as did Granny. "Do you need me to bring you something for your tummy? A ginger ale, perhaps?" "A ginger ale sounds wonderful," she replied with a sigh. "I'll have one too," Robin said, handing the menu to Granny. "And a burger. Medium well, please." John handed his menu to the older woman. "I'll follow Regina's lead. BLT, no cheese, and a Coke." Granny nodded. "I'll go put those in and get you your drinks." Once she was gone, Robin took Regina's hand in his. "How did the trip to the bank go?" "It went well. Everything was still in my safety deposit box, and I was able to give it to John," she said, glancing at him. He nodded. "I sent it back with an associate. They'll start going through her books and emails, but I left the recordings for myself. No one else has to hear that yet." "Thank you," she whispered, lacing her finger with Robin's. Robin raised their joined hands to kiss hers before lowering his voice. "I did some research of my own. Embezzlement is pursued by the company, so that means Gold and maybe Leopold convinced the current management team to press charges for a 10-year-old crime." "How?" "Is Nathaniel Cole still the main stakeholder?" Regina asked. John nodded. "He is. You know him?" "Nate Cole's an old friend of Leopold. He'll do anything to protect him. Even found me one day after I was fired to threaten me even more against talking about what happened. I thought it was about my supposed affair, but looking back, he had made known about the rapes and was trying to keep my mouth shut about them, in case the NDA hadn't scared me properly." She scowled, and Robin knew she still felt ashamed that she had let the document control her life for so long. "So he'd agreed to go along with this if he thinks you'll be a threat to Leopold?" John asked. She nodded before asking, "Who is the CEO now? I didn't really care to keep up with information like that." Robin pulled out his phone and pulled up the page he hadn't swiped away. "Isaac Heller." "Of course," she said, shaking her head. "He'll definitely do whatever Gold wants. Whenever Gold told me to jump, Heller would ask him how high. He wanted to be the golden child and resented me for being Gold's heir apparent. If only he knew what that meant. Who am I kidding? He probably would have done it, no questions asked. So we have two people who have agreed to do something Gold wanted without possibly considering the ramifications for the company. Did they not think you would defend yourself?" John asked, tapping his fingers against the table. She shook her head. "Probably not. They probably thought I'd get some poor overworked soul from legal aid who would just encourage me to take a plea deal. Instead, they just opened a can of worms they probably didn't want to," he said, nodding. "Blanchard Financials is probably going to have to answer some very uncomfortable questions. They're also going to have a PR nightmare on their hands as well if it comes out that several high-ranking managers knew that Regina was being made a scapegoat and that they covered everything Leopold did to her. Robin mused, his thumb rubbing the back of her hand in soothing circles. John grinned. Oh, I get more and more confident about this with each passing second. You're going to be fine, Regina. I'm starting to really believe that, she replied, giving Robin a small grin. It made his heart skip a beat, and he started to feel a bit lighter himself. After lunch, John headed back to his office to go through everything Regina had given him. She went across the street with Robin to check her father's mail and to water the few plants they had in the apartment. I think I'll change here and then head to the hospital, she said, tossing out a few pieces of spam mail. You can head back to your office. I know you'll have a lot to worry about on top of everything going on with me. Everything is fine there, Regina. The authorities out in Cali are dealing with Selena. So I'm all yours for the rest of the day, he assured her, sitting on her couch. Regina bit her lip as a troubling thought popped into her mind. Robin, what are they going to say when you stand by me as I'm charged with the same thing Selena is being prosecuted for? Your situation and hers are completely different, he replied, but we'll let my PR team handle that. It's why I have them. You focus on your trial, and I'll focus on you. She sighed, smiling. I'll be quick. I want to spend as much time with my father as possible. He nodded, standing to approach her. But don't run yourself ragged, lovely. I don't want you to end up in the hospital bed next to him due to exhaustion. I guess I could use with a bit of a nap, she replied, feeling fatigue. Even her bones felt heavier. Care to join me? Keep away the nightmares? My superpower is always at your disposal, love. Robin took her hand and let her lead him to her bedroom. She opened the door and let him study it. The room was a strange mixture of her and Emma, still painted the lavender color she had insisted on in high school, and with posters of her favorite singers still hanging on the wall. She also had a few movie posters as well, and he raised his eyebrow at one. I wouldn't have taken you for a Titanic fan, he said, motioning to that poster. Everyone was a Titanic fan, even you. Admit it, she teased him. He grabbed her hand. I'll never let go, Rose. Except when I freeze to death because you wouldn't move an inch over so I can get on. Seriously, we both can fit. Regina rolled her eyes, pushing him down on the bed. He pulled her down with him, and they laughed until tears rolled down their cheeks. There it is, he said, brushing some of her tears away. There's that satisfying but elusive smile I think about every time I close my eyes. I love this smile. You do? She leaned into his warm hand with a soft sigh. He nodded. This one lights up your whole face, including your eyes, and makes you even more beautiful. Regina kissed his palm as she took his hand off her cheek. Do you want me to see if there's something you can sleep in? I doubt you want to wrinkle your suit. If you have something, or if it would bother you if I just slept in my boxers, he said, shrugging. No, she replied, touched at how considerate he was being. You can sleep in your boxers. I'm going to put on pajamas, though. Whatever makes you comfortable. I'll even go change in the bathroom once you point me to it. Robin stood and headed toward the door. Regina joined him, pointing to a door diagonal to hers. Right there. Ignore the light fixture, it buzzes. We can never get the super to fix it. He frowned. That's not right. I can send someone to see to it. You've never dealt with apartments before, have you? She teased. Don't worry about it. When he opened his mouth to no doubt insist on hiring someone to fix it for her, she pushed him toward the bathroom. Just go change, okay? Robin closed the door behind him, and she turned to her chest of drawers, pulling out a pair of pajamas. She didn't care if they were hers or Emma's, as they had shared clothing so many times in the past, it was hard to keep track of whose was really whose. As she pulled off her clothes and started to put on the pajamas, Robin consumed her thoughts. She had always been afraid that revealing what Leo had done to her would chase people away, not because they were repulsed, but because they wouldn't know how to respond to her afterwards. While she sensed some hesitancy in Robin, she didn't know if it was because of what she had told him or because of his lingering guilt over his role in what was going on now in her life. Regina suspected it was a combination of the two, but she also believed he was as determined as she was to make the relationship work. That, in and of itself, was reassuring to her. She knew being in a relationship with her couldn't be easy. Life had long ago proven that when it rained, it poured on her. For years, she had then pushed people away to stand in the deluge by herself, so as not to be a bother to anyone. Most people had let her. But Robin had fought her, refusing to leave and holding an umbrella over her. It then allowed her to see that Emma and Will were also right behind him with umbrellas of their own. Dr. Espenson had been right. She needed to let people help her and not deal with everything alone. Seriously, Regina, Robin said, laying his clothes over Emma's tattered old armchair. If you want that buzzing to stop, just say the word. Someone can be here today to fix it. Laughing, Regina wrapped her arms around his neck. All I want is for you to hold me while I take a half-hour nap. An hour, Robin amended. When she started to protest, he shook his head. You can allow yourself 60 minutes to rest and recharge, Regina. The fatigue weighing down her limbs agreed. Okay, she replied. 1 hour. She released him so they could climb into bed. As she settled the blankets around them, Robin set the alarm on his phone. There, 1 hour. He set his phone down on her nightstand as she curled next to him. Regina rested her head in the crook of his neck and placed one of her hands over his heart. As he rubbed soothing circles against her back, she felt herself drift off into what she was sure would be a rejuvenating rest. Right, that's what I have so far for Chapter 19. There's about a couple of more scenes left to write. I would also have everyone keep in mind that this is the rough draft, the first draft of Chapter 19, so by the time it gets to be posted, there'll probably be changes. Some scenes may be shortened, some scenes may be longer. I don't know exactly when I'll be posting it. I'm hoping within the next week or two. If you have any questions, any comments, you can leave them on my Twitter at AEBrim or on my Tumblr, believingispowerfulmagic.tumblr.com. And I will be putting up a poll on my Twitter shortly after this to see if you would like me to do another live reading in the future. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and if you're on the East Coast of the United States like I am, that you're safe ahead of Hermine. I know I will be taking precautions to make sure I'm prepared in any event what may happen. So, bye.